And I'm Debbie Barnett. I've had this group. I started it when I was in Orange County, California, many years ago. So it's probably been maybe 5 years or so. And then I moved to Tucson. No, it was more than that because I've been in Tucson almost 4 years. So I had it for, is that 7 years I started this? I'm glad you know. Linda's a friend of mine from Orange County, so she remembers back in the day when I had it over there. I'm also going to see if I can do this on Facebook Live. It may or may not work. We'll see. It did 1 month and then it hasn't since then. All right, so I was trying to figure out a topic for tonight, and I thought, let's just talk about current astrological transits for late October, early November, because there's a lot going on. There's a lot of craziness in the world with COVID, and then Mars retrograde in Aries for half the year just adds to that unsettledness. And I find that astrology helps people kind of make sense of things. Like I recently started a new job doing part-time executive assistant work for a CPA. And when I was interviewing, I wasn't going to say anything about astrology because you never know if people are going to be into it or not. So I didn't say anything. But she brought it up. She said, "Oh, I'm a Scorpio." And I'm like, "Yeah, I know. I already looked you up." I go, "I'm an astrologer," and yada, yada. So I was very thankful that she's into it. But like, I started just before Mercury turned retrograde. So there's a tax filing deadline on October 15th, so last Thursday. So just trying to get documents back and forth through the secure portal and people not being able to upload things. And whenever anything wacky like that would happen, I'm just like, well, Mercury retrograde. So it's been sort of a catchphrase for us in the office the past couple of days. And earlier we were sharing some folks' tales of Mercury retrograde. It brought Rasa back to doing astrology and posting about astrology. So it's not all bad. And the truth is that there's nothing good or bad in astrology. It's our judgment that makes it seem a certain way, right? Mercury retrograde is a time to go inward instead of being outward. Same with Mars, any of the planets that go retrograde. It's more of an internal process than being external in the world. And every now and then we need a break. We need to take a chance to rest and relax and rejuvenate ourselves. Mercury being of the mind, that means taking mental breaks. So if that means getting off of social media and not paying attention to the news, maybe start to read again, and do things out in nature and do things that are good for you and healthy for you instead of being caught up in all the craziness that's happening. This is a good time to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Let's see if I can get my presentation going. Share. Okay, the astrology of October and November. We have this meetup the third Wednesday of each month. I had somebody earlier today think that it was a weekly thing. I'm like, no, it's a monthly thing. It's 7 p.m. Arizona time, which is currently the same as Pacific time, but when everyone else goes through the time change, we don't. So even though I don't change, everybody else does. So I still have to kind of keep up with what time it is everywhere else. So if you'd like to join the meetup group, if you're not already a member and get notices of what's happening, that would be good. Here's me. Astro Yoga Woman is what I go by. I've been teaching yoga for 20 years. I've been practicing for over 40. So in my astrology readings, I always include like what I call a yoga teacher's perspective. I wouldn't say a scholar, but I love the Yoga Sutras and the philosophy of yoga. And so my approach to astrology is based on a yoga teacher's perspective about, okay, we're in this challenging time. Here's some practices and techniques and some things that you can do to help smooth it over and help get through what we're going through. So there's my contact info. My website is astroyogawoman.com. Email astroyogawoman@gmail.com, and my cell phone, as I mentioned earlier, I have a 951 number because I was in the IE, Inland Empire, for a number of years. And can everybody see this photo Wave if you can see it. Okay, good. It says actual photo of me surviving Mercury and Mars retrograde. Right? That's kind of how we all feel, a little beat up, like we've been through the ringer and we're not finished yet. Oh, I am offering discounted mini readings if you don't want to get a full hour reading that I put several hours worth of research into, and I'm doing that for $1 a minute. I say 10-minute here, but really 15 minutes is better. You get a real, like, not in depth, but I can tell you a lot in 15 minutes. So for $15, that's a pretty good deal, I think. And some of you on here have had readings by me and you can attest. This I've used in the past. Oops. It's 2020, written by Stephen King, directed by Quentin Tarantino. That's what it feels like. And I have a feeling that 2021 is going to be similar. All right, we were talking earlier about Mercury retrograde. It's stationed retrograde on October 13th, and it turns direct on November 3rd, election day. And later on, we'll talk about the chart of election day. But all retrogrades have 3 phases. And the first phase is when it enters its shadow, which means the point at which Mercury will come back to, which is 24 degrees Libra. So it entered its shadow phase on September 23rd, and then it turned retrograde on the 13th. So to me, that shadow period, or it's also called the echo phase, is more disruptive than when the planet is actually retrograde, because it's, of course, it isn't moving backward. It seems as though it's moving backward from the Earth's perspective, and anything Mercury related starts to go haywire, like electronics, communications, cars, which we were mentioning earlier. We've had some car difficulties. The way our mental processes work. Some people don't sleep well when Mercury is in its shadow phase because their mind doesn't shut off. It's just active all the time. The retrograde phase itself is the second phase, and it goes to all the way up to 11 degrees Scorpio, and then it'll come back to 26 degrees Libra. November 4th is when it leaves the shadow phase, or when it stations direct on November 3rd, it goes back to being in its shadow until it gets back up to speed of where it turned retrograde. So really 3 phases of it. So people say, oh, well, Mercury's not in retrograde anymore. Why are things still wacky? Well, because it's in its echo phase or shadow phase. And in this one, just like
phase a little bit more, Deb.
Pardon me?
Can you explain that shadow phase just a little bit more?
Yeah, it's slowing down. So
okay.
When it hits the degree that it comes back to, which is between 24 and 26 Libra, it's slowing down. It's not at its full speed. And as it slows down up until the point of retrograde, that's called the echo phase or shadow phase. And then it actually stations retrograde on the October 13th. And then it starts to move backward. And it goes back to that point of 24 Libra. And then it stations direct. And then it starts going forward again. And when it gets back to 11 degrees Scorpio, which is where it stationed, then it's out of its shadow phase. And then it's back up to full speed.
Okay, thank you.
So when a planet stations direct, it's a very potent time. It's a pivotal point because it's seemingly standing still. And so imagine like if you've taken a nap or you had a really hard sleep and somebody woke you up in the middle of it and you're really groggy, or even if you had surgery and you've had anesthesia and you're trying to fight your way out of it, you're not like fully there, right? It takes a while for you to get up and get your coffee, your tea, or get your routine going and kind of clear the cobwebs. So while after it stations direct and it's still in that shadow phase, it's kind of waking up from its retrograde process. So things still we're not in the clear until it passes that shadow phase, which will be on November 19th. So from the 4th through the 19th is the second shadow phase as it's getting back up to speed. Any other questions about that before I? Okay. So just like our last retrograde, Mercury retrograde in April, this is a combination of water and air signs. So it's a mix of sensitivity and aloofness, right? Air is detached, it's mental, water is emotional. We're asked to combine our emotions with our communications and social interactions in a very cautious manner. Time has no meaning. Hence, Mercury retrograde might meddle with our schedules and appointments. Don't expect to progress on your projects very much right now. And with Mercury in Libra, relationships can be impacted because Libra rules relationships. So the chart of today, I set this for 7 o'clock Tucson time. I see a trine happening. I see a lot of red lines, squares, and oppositions happening. Venus is opposite Neptune right now, which can be very imaginative and very creative, very spiritual. Like Neptune is the higher vibration of Venus. So it's like we're called to be more altruistic, have more of a spiritual viewpoint than just being caught up in the mundane of everyday life. We still have this, we still have the stellium happening in Capricorn with Jupiter, Pluto, and Saturn. We've been having that stellium all year, and we'll have it throughout the rest of the year. Jupiter and Saturn, of course, leave Capricorn on the winter solstice on December 21st and move into 0 degrees Aquarius. And it's the start of a new era. So just the fact that Jupiter and Saturn are coming together, that happens every 20 years, it starts a new era. And then the fact that they're moving into a new sign at the same time is also the start of a new era. So there'll be a shift happening in late December, probably a welcome shift. And then something exciting happening. We have what's called a blue moon happening on Halloween. That means that there are 2 full moons in the same month. October 1st, we had a full moon. And then October 31st, we've got a full moon. So that's what a blue moon, and when they say once in a blue moon, because it's kind of rare to have 2 moons in the same month. Some interesting points about this moon. One, it's on Halloween, which just adds to the Halloween factor, I think. There's some creepiness to it. You know, La Luna, the moon, and that's where we get the word lunatic, right? And Halloween is a time of lunatics anyway. They say that the veil is thinner at that time of year. And so with the full moon on Halloween, it's just sort of an interesting thing. But the fact that the sun is opposite Taurus in Uranus is an interesting point. Like anytime Uranus is involved, it's expect the unexpected. Like something strange might happen, something out of left field, something out of the blue. It can cause nervousness and tension, which often arises from an unsettling situation full of change and uncertainty. The result can be a reactionary or rebellious nature with a difficult polarity to overcome. We can expect unexpected and exciting encounters or events that shake up your world. Although initially upsetting and you may resist any change, it may offer a better way forward for you if you keep an open mind, which is always a good idea when Uranus is involved. You may anticipate something new on the horizon or feel nervous. Odd behavior or radical about face in someone close to you may cause anxiety too. They may be looking for more personal freedom, and any resistance or dominance from you would further encourage any rebelliousness. Arguments or separation may result from impatience or unwillingness to adapt. Okay, so the full moon is happening in fixed signs. Scorpio and Taurus are both fixed. So that unwillingness to adapt is a hallmark of being a fixed sign. I'm a Leo, which is also fixed. And then Aquarius is the 4th fixed signs. And Uranus rules Aquarius, by the way. And then the moon conjunct Uranus. So Uranus is playing a big part in this full moon. It's opposite the sun, and then the moon is conjunct Uranus. It's felt as subconscious impulsiveness. Sudden events may result in relationship upsets, family disputes, or a major change in direction regarding close relationships. You may fluctuate between extended periods of wakefulness and periods of lethargy. Psychic talents are being stimulated, so act on instinct. Thinking too much or trying to be patient probably won't work out so well. Flashes of insight should be taken seriously, so take a chance and back yourself. It's important that you express yourself to the max and not be held back by tradition or the standards of society. That's the Uranus impulse. Like, it doesn't want to do what everybody else does. It doesn't want to be status quo. It wants to go its own way. And some eccentric or weird actions may not turn out so well, but one or two may prove extremely valuable. Expect to feel somewhat isolated or detached from your loved ones during this period. This is the standard for any of the astrological aspects associated with psychic abilities. And so here's the chart of the full moon. And we can see, and I set this for Tucson, but wherever you are, it's going to have a different rising sign. But if you notice in the 6th house, which would be the 4 o'clock position, you can see the moon exactly conjunct Uranus at 8 degrees of Taurus, and the sun in the 12th house at 8 degrees Scorpio. Now, interesting point, my nodes are, North node is in Leo at 8 degrees, and then of course, South node in Aquarius at 8 degrees. So it's creating a fixed grand cross in my chart with this transit. And whenever any planet is transiting square to your nodes, it's called at the bends. So at like the turning point of the nodes. So it's going to be an interesting full moon for me, I would think. It might be that I meet somebody who changes my destiny or my fate because my nodes are involved. Something dramatic might happen around that time, but I find that interesting that my nodes are at 8 degrees of the Leo Aquarius axis, and that's exactly where this full moon is happening on Halloween. All right, so do we have any questions about the full moon chart? The full moon happening, comments?
How long does the effect of a full moon last?
It's a couple days when you would feel it, but the lunar cycle is a month long, right? A month is a moon cycle, so it's from new moon to new moon. So we're still in the phase of the new moon, and then of course the first quarter moon after the week after the new moon. After 2 weeks, it's the full moon. So this is kind of like the culmination of the lunar cycle, and then it starts to wane. It waxes and wanes. So how it's felt is a few days before and a few days after, but the lunar cycle itself is a whole month long. It's 28 days.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else?
I do notice like 2 or 3 days before a full moon, and not everyone, but a lot of them, and a couple of days after, it affects my sleep patterns.
Yeah, me too. Don't you
it's
have
like the
Cancer
brain
rising?
won't shut off, the inspirations come in. And
Linda, aren't you Cancer rising?
no, I'm double Taurus.
Oh, you're Taurus. Okay. Seemed like you had Cancer somewhere in your chart. I can't remember. But I have
gonna make me more intuitive, yes.
yeah, I have Cancer rising. So the moon is my chart ruler. So I too am affected by new moons and full moons. I tend to not sleep well during those times. Anybody else have that? Full moons, new moons? Yeah, Lisa. Yeah. All right.
I have a quick question, Debbie. Is the reason that you don't sleep so well because Cancer is ruled by the moon?
That's what I think.
Okay.
Yeah, because that's my chart ruler. And of course, the moon being the fastest moving planet, it's not a planet, obviously, but in astrology it is. Like, some people feel it in all the different signs that it goes through. I'm not that sensitive. I have Gemini moon in the 12th, so it's kind of it. And plus my moon is in the 12th, which rules sleep and dreams. So I think given that it's in the 12th, It's in Gemini, which is a mental sign because it's air, and I'm Cancer rising. I think all of that has an effect. But I know other people that aren't Cancer rising that also have interrupted sleep during full and new moons. So,
Thank you.
I just go with it. What are you gonna do?
I had a question about the Grand Cross. Is that only for the nodes or is it for anything?
Now that's for me personally, because my nodes are at 8 degrees of Leo and Aquarius, and the full moon is happening at 8 degrees Scorpio and Taurus. So for me, it's creating this Grand Cross. That's not for everybody. You'd have to look at your chart and see what planets and points are being affected in your chart to see what kind of effect, and also what house it's happening in. So I have Scorpio in my 5th house and Taurus in my 11th house. So 5th house is creativity. I don't have children, but if I did, it would be concerning them. Fun, romance. 11th house is groups, friends. 11th house is a money house. So with the moon in Taurus there, you know, it might be that I get some money. And conjunct Uranus, it could be unexpected money, which I would
I
vote.
have a question.
Uh-huh.
I'm sorry. I have a question. I have moved to the States just recently. So I did my chart's relocation. So my ascendant has changed to Cancer. But me personally, I still don't feel the chart. So do you have, you know, experiences on that? Because I still, like in my country, my rising sign is Scorpio.
Yeah.
And I totally felt it. Like it was really me.
Yeah.
Now I have Cancer, which is like, I don't really feel it.
Right.
It's very weird.
Well, your natal chart, you'll always live that, no matter where you live in the world. I mean, that's just part of your DNA, your makeup. What the relocated chart does, it means that wherever you are on the planet, like the house system or the houses change. So the areas affected would have more of a topical effect than an internal effect. Right? So if you're Cancer rising and something's happening in Cancer while you're in wherever you are in the States, you know, it might have something to do with the mundane world more so than your internal, who you are as a person and this life path. They're both water signs, so they're both sensitive. Do you feel more nurturing now? Like you want to take care of people or stay home more? Or?
I'm much more at home.
Yeah.
I am much more at home. I work from home. I am like 99% of the time at home.
Okay,
so
well,
that's
Cancer.
definitely that's Cancer.
Yeah.
At its fullest, yes. So yeah, but I'm not married. I have no kids. I have no pets. So I don't really know.
Yeah.
I'll figure, I think.
Do you cook more?
I think yes.
Yeah.
But I was always cooking, but maybe more at this time.
Kind of, we have to, because
Yes.
everybody's cooking more, like it or not, because
Yeah.
of the pandemic. So yeah, but relocation astrology is fascinating. I love that topic, and you can go into parent lines, which are like where planets cross. And if you live close to one of the planetary lines, that makes a difference. So it isn't just your relocated chart, but like what planets come to the angles in your chart, in your relocated chart. That's interesting.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
That's very interesting.
And you can do
Thank
all
you.
that on astro.com, which I used for years. I have Solar Fire now, but astro.com has the astrology of travel, I think, is one of their options. And it doesn't do parents, but it'll do the planetary lines of your relocated chart. So very
Okay,
interesting.
thank you.
And it's free. So we like free. All right, Mars retrograde in Aries. So it entered Aries on June 27th. It entered its shadow phase on my birthday, July 27th, at 15 degrees Aries. So it went halfway through the sign before it got into its shadow phase, meaning it started to slow down. stationed retrograde on September 9th at 28 degrees Aries. So that means it got almost all the way to the end. And what they say is that that's the initial narrative. So like if we're telling a story with this retrograde, like what was happening from July 27th through September 9th, you know, whatever phase of the pandemic we were in, whatever was happening in your life, wherever you have Aries in your chart, it's in my 10th house. I was looking for a job at that time. So like that's the initial opening chapter of the story. Stationed retrograde, September 9th at 28 Aries. So then it starts to move backward on November 13th. So 10 days after the election, it gets back to that 15 degrees Aries where it stationed retrograde to begin with. And then it exits its shadow phase just after the new year on January 3rd. And then it leaves Aries 3 days later on January 6th. So over 6 months of Mars in Aries is a lot. Mars is the ruler of Aries, so it's strong there, but it's also, Mars is a hothead, you know, and Aries is a hothead. It's a fire sign. I'm a fire sign. So anytime you have fire in your chart, it's ego and it's me, 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 me. So Aries, Leo, and Sag are the 3 fire signs. So with Mars in its home sign and retrograde, it's like, can be very frustrating. It can be very creative. You know, we get to choose how we use this energy, where we're going to direct our energy and our life force. In yoga, we call that prana. Where are you putting your life force? Is it into being divisive, or is it into being taking the higher road and taking the higher mind? So it's a challenge. You know, a lot of us are challenged politically these days with people that don't share our point of view. And that's why I say it might be good during this Mercury retrograde time to not be on social media so much, not be following the news so much, and take it just in small bite-sized pieces so that we can preserve our peace of mind. The outcome of this, of Mars retrograde, it can fight dirty and result in a combative election campaign. Divisiveness may continue even after the election. Easily triggered and reactive. It's strongly assertive energy in our personal lives and on the world stage. Personal viewpoint is very subjective, and it's hard to see things from others' point of view. And it's also taking things personally. Like I said, fire signs are me, me, me. And so with Mars retrograde in Aries, we take things personally. So learn to be like water and just let things flow past you. You know, you don't need to grab onto comments that somebody makes and take things personally. Just let it flow on by. Any questions about or comments about Mars retrograde?
Yeah, I had a question. I'm very new to this, new to astrology. So my question is, what does it mean when the planet is retrograding in a particular sign? Like, what is the sign's impact in which it's retrograding?
It's the stage. It's the flavor, or not the stage, it's the costume that it wears. So the actor is the planet.
Yes.
Sign is the role that it's playing. And then the house that it's in is the setting. It's the stage that it's on. So Aries is the first sign of the zodiac. So it's very dynamic. It's very pioneering. It's like, I'm going to charge ahead. It's a ram, right? So it's going to ram ahead and do its own thing. And it doesn't care if people are following it or not. So that's the role that Mars, which is the planet of war, it's a planet of our drives, whether it's our sex drive, our drive to accomplish things, to make a name for ourselves out in the world. It's playing the role of this warrior in Aries, this pioneer, this dynamic, you know, push your way through no matter what happens. You see these pictures of goats or rams like climbing the cliff. You know, they're on this tiny little ledge. You know, they don't let obstacles stop them. They just go through.
If just for the sake of argument, if Mars were retrograding in another sign, let's say it was retrograding in, I don't know, Taurus instead.
Yeah.
How would that be different? How would that Mars warrior energy be different?
Yeah. So think of the key words for Taurus. It's earth, So Linda's got a lot of Taurus. She can tell you all about it. It's a fixed sign, so it's very much steady as she goes. It's ruled by Venus, so it's more about beauty, harmony. It's very earthy. It's very sensuous, very tactile. It likes good food. It likes nice things. It likes to be surrounded by beauty. It's a lot more mellow than Aries. It's not all about me, me, me. It's more about, I want to make a beautiful environment so that I can enjoy life. You think of Ferdinand the bull, who's in the field eating daisies and somebody's feeding it grapes, rather than a ram that's trying to ram its opinion down your throat. It's a whole different energy between Aries and Taurus. So with Mars retrograde in Aries, plus the fact that it rules it, so it has more power here as it is. Usually it's in a sign for 6 weeks, but it's in this sign for 6 months. So it's like way longer than it normally is. So the energy of Mars is, it's kind of like you're ready for the trip to be over, but there's all these problems and you missed the train and you missed that connection and they didn't have your hotel right. And it's like, I just want to go home and sleep in my own bed. You know, we're ready for it to move off into Taurus so that we can relax and then start to enjoy life more. And because Mars rules our sex drive, it could say that we get to be more sensuous after January than right now, where it's all about me, me, me. You know, we want to take care of, nurture, and have fun with our partners. And even if that's just you, you know, it's like, it's not so much about getting my needs met. It's about creating an environment of pleasure because it's Venus ruled.
Well, Deb, I would also say like the anger aspect on the negative side of the Mars and Aries thing, the negative aspect to a Taurus situation would be gluttony.
Yeah, right. Yeah, not knowing when enough is enough.
Right, taking too much indulgence and pleasure, yeah.
Yeah, too much indulgence. Also, because it's a fixed sign, Tauruses can get stuck in the mud. You know, it's like granite, like trying to move granite, like trying to change a Taurus's opinion. Any of the fixed signs' opinion is a challenge, unless they have a Gemini moon. But so there's good, like I say, there's no good or bad. There's positive and negative to all of the signs and all of the planets. And it's how we choose to focus on things that really makes a difference. But good point. Yeah, it can be gluttony and can be overindulgence, could lead to different kinds of addictions because it's all about pleasure, 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 and avoiding pain. So does that help, Flora?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And like I mentioned earlier, a retrograde planet is that energy is turned inward. It's not outwardly focused, it's inwardly focused. Well, after a buildup, I don't know if you guys have ever used a pressure cooker. I have. And if something, I don't know what happens, but sometimes they blow. And I had green beans all over my kitchen. And I refuse to use a pressure cooker anymore. But that to me is what Mars retrograde in Aries feels like, is like a pressure cooker. And plus with the pandemic and people not being able to be in contact with other people and touch people and hug people and get that social connection, it feels like this pressure cooker that's just waiting to blow. And I have a feeling that the election is going to be that blowing point. Like no matter who wins, half the country is going to be pissed off. And they're going to be very vocal about it and probably take to the streets and, you know, take up arms or who knows what. But, you know, this pressure cooker that we're all under, I have a feeling is just going to go cray-cray come the election. So here's the chart. I set it for 10 p.m. Tucson. Of course, because Mercury, you'll see Mercury in this chart down at the bottom here in the 4th house at 25, almost 26 degrees of Libra. It's stationing direct on election day, which, like I said earlier, a planet at its station is very potent. So Mercury rules things like ballots and communications and voting and things. All of those are mercurial type items. So the fact that Mercury is stationing direct on the election day, to me and other astrologers have said this, we're not going to know who wins for a while. Probably at least until it exits its shadow phase, which I believe was like the 19th, if not longer. So don't get your hopes up that, oh, it's all going to be over with on November 3rd and we'll know. No, we're not. I'd be really surprised if we do. And then plus the fact that it's Mercury, you know, things change. That's why they say don't buy a car or a big object like a computer or whatever during a Mercury retrograde, because there might be problems with it. You might have to take it back and do it again. You know, they might have to do recounts. They might have like, oh, we just found this batch of ballots that came in that we didn't discover before, and that could make a difference. You know, there's too many variables that are up in the air during this time for us to really be able to call the election on November 3rd. So don't get your hopes up. An interesting point on that day is what in this house, the 12th house in this chart, the moon is conjunct the north node at 21 degrees Gemini. So that just adds to like the fatedness of this. Like everything that's happening is happening for a reason. We may not know what that reason is. We may not understand it. We may not agree with it, but there are no accidents here. Like there are no mistakes, there are no accidents. It's happening for a reason, whatever it is. And so that's where when we can like rise above and see things from the spiritual viewpoint, we don't get so caught up in the day-to-day mundane aspects of life. Like from a soul's perspective, the stuff that we worry about and that we fight about and we argue over, it doesn't matter, right? We get all worked up and we affect our physical health by stressing ourselves out, and stress wears your organs out, right? So take this higher view that it's all unfolding as it should. We're surrendered. We're just this water flowing, this river flowing. We don't have to put up resistance. It just adds to too much conflict. Let's see, what else is interesting about this chart? Let's see. Stations direct at 25 degrees Libra. Oh, right, it's squaring Jupiter, Pluto, Saturn, and Capricorn. So that stellium that we have in Capricorn, Mercury at Libra is a square. So a square is a 90-degree angle. It's a challenging aspect. It's like it's forcing us into a corner and we have to take action, right? So we've got to do something to try to get ourselves out of this situation. So Mercury stationing, think about what you've learned over the past 3 weeks. What do you want to focus on for the next 90 days? What do you want to fill your mind with? Are you happy with your current routines and schedule? How about your health, your stress levels? And if not, what do you want to change? What is or isn't working, and what can you do about it? So retrogrades are a time to go inward. On election day, on November 3rd, this is a good time to review what have you learned over the past 3 weeks? What can you change? What can you do differently? The fact that Mercury is square Jupiter, pay extra attention to how you express yourself. You may get a bit too cocky, and this could come across in your speech as arrogance, because Jupiter expands whatever it touches. Square to Pluto, intense interactions with other people. Take care not to take conspiracy theories too seriously. There's a lot of that going around these days. We become more defensive under this influence, but it's important not to let your fighting spirit back you into a corner and complicate matters. Experience of the darker side of humanity. Take the high road by maintaining an open mind and not arguing for the sake of it. I see that a lot on Facebook. People just arguing just to argue. So frustrating. It's like that debate. Oh my God, I couldn't watch it. Square Saturn, do not rely on the words of others and be careful with your own. You're likely to say the wrong thing and dig a bigger hole for yourself. There may be some distance or separation in close relationships. This, together with gloomy thoughts, bad news, or loneliness, can have a negative effect on your mental well-being. So Jupiter expands things, Saturn contracts. So with this square of Mercury stationing, with all these planets in Capricorn, the Jupiter, Pluto, and Saturn, right? There's both this expansion of energy and a contraction, and then whatever Pluto touches, it transforms, right? It like takes you down into the depths so that it can be healed. And then just to add to the fun on that day, the sun in Scorpio will still be opposite of Uranus and Taurus. We talked about that a little bit ago. It can cause nervousness and tension, which often arises from an unsettling situation full of change and uncertainty. The result can be a reactionary or rebellious nature with a difficult polarity to overcome. So like I said, whoever wins, half the country is going to be pissed off, right? So that's that sun opposite Uranus. There's going to be like revolutions and revolt and people taking their pitchforks and torches to the streets, and don't go to protests. Protest online if you must protest, but I would say stay away from crowds, stay away from any kind of upset, because with Uranus in the picture, you might as well just throw a firebomb into it and who knows what's going to happen. So that's going to be an exciting day. Any questions about that, about the chart on election day or any of the aspects that are happening? Comments?
That just sounds like my entire year.
Yes.
I'm like, what? This sounds, yeah.
Yeah. Well, the pandemic has been like, I think the start of it was when Saturn and Pluto conjuncted on January 12th. That was sort of, that's when it started making its way over here, and it sort of was the tipping point of the astrology for the year. And someone said they're selling their house. It's like change. It's big change. Like the way things were going didn't work anymore, right? And it's time that we needed something new. We didn't necessarily want it like this, but we don't get to decide how things are going to be. Oh, she's signing a contract on November 3rd. Wow, that's a day Mercury stations direct. So that's an interesting day to sign a contract. And then the last chart we'll talk about is the Jupiter-Pluto conjunction that's happening on November 12th. The day after that is the day that that Mars turns direct, stations direct. So this whole early to mid-November is a very potent time that's happening. Here's the chart for it. And the first conjunction was on April 4th. At 24 of Capricorn, the Sabian symbol of a nun entering a convent. That's the initial narrative. And that's when we all kind of went into lockdown. I know Arizona shut down on March 31st or 30th. And it's like everybody had to stay at home. So it was like a nun entering the convent. On June 30th, both turned retrograde, or both of them were retrograde at 24 Capricorn. Important turn of events or necessary revisioning required integration and contemplation to proceed more effectively. Like we had to figure out how to do business differently this summer, like everybody. Like I know Linda, you started teaching more Zoom classes, yoga on Zoom. Like I did all my astrology readings are now on Zoom. Even if somebody's in town, they don't come here, I do them online. Everything changed this summer because we had to. On November 12th, 22 Capricorn, they station direct, and it's learning to adjust regarding the initial narrative, understand how to work with these insights and developments. So just like we would do with when Mercury turns direct, it's like we've had a chance to review the things that are Jupiter related, the things that are Pluto related, and see what we've learned and how we can move forward. And the outcome, deepening of growth, finding what truly matters, regenerate vision for possibility through dealing with difficulties and facing whatever is ruptured. And it's time to find our superpower and regulate the emotional wave. So whenever Pluto's involved, you can expect transformation. Like I said earlier, whenever Uranus is involved, expect the unexpected. Well, with Pluto, it's like something's going to transform. And usually it takes you down into the depths in order to do that, because Pluto is Hades, it's the ruler of hell. So it's kind of like we have to go through a dark night of the soul so that we can reemerge as a new, fresh being. It rules Scorpio, which is sex, birth, death, regeneration. So it's like we're shedding the old, and so we can be reborn as new. And with Jupiter there, it expands. So it's an expanded transformation. So November
So,
12th.
Deb,
Yeah.
I have a question. On November 11th, my mom is supposed to have an angioplasty.
Uh-huh.
Is that, I mean, because I know like on a full moon, you don't want to do surgeries or anything,
Right.
but
If one
even though it's a procedure, it's for her heart, you know?
Yeah, exactly. It's better if you can avoid any kind of surgery during a Mars retrograde, and Mars stations 2 days after that. So, but, tell a doctor that. Oh, I'm not gonna have
Yeah,
that surgery
right.
then because Mars is retrograde and the astrologer said not to do it. So you you pray, right?
Yeah.
You give it to a higher power and it'll be what
Yeah.
it'll be. But if there's an elective aspect to having surgery, best not when Mars is retrograde, and I would wait even till after it leaves its shadow phase.
Okay.
If possible, but it's not always possible.
Yeah.
So
Right.
that's where we just go with the river and let it flow.
Okay.
So
Thanks.
again, here's my contact info. Any questions or comments? We covered a lot here. There's a lot coming up this month. What have you learned? What'd you get?
I have a question.
Yeah.
You just talked about how we need to find our superpower.
Yes.
Does that show on our birth chart, you think?
Probably. Like what planets are in their domain, what planets are on the angle, what are the aspects to the planets? Like what are your talents? What do people recognize you for? What are you good at? What do you love to do? As adults, we often do what's practical, not what we love. But when you're looking for your purpose, like think back to your childhood. What did I love to do? I love to climb trees. That's what I love to do. I love to be off in nature by myself. I love to read. I love to write. I love to create art. So if you can bring whatever your childhood passions were into your adult life, that's sort of our natural proclivity of what we're good at.
Okay.
Good question. Yeah.
Thank you.
Anyone else with superpowers? There was a quote that I used to have on my email, and it was, calm is my superpower. Right? So if you can stay calm in the midst of chaos, I think it's Lao Tzu that says if you can stay centered in the midst of chaos and let all things take their course. So it's like you want to be in the eye of the hurricane and let the hurricane happen around you, but you're centered, you're grounded. And to me, that's where our spiritual practices come in, whether it's meditation or yoga or chanting or prayer or altruistic works, whatever it is that you do to keep yourself grounded and centered. That's what we need to do right now, because we can get all worked up and caught up in the bullshit. Basically, that's what it is. It's bullshit. From a spiritual perspective, none of this really matters, but yet we take it so personally and we make it about ourselves, like our lives depend upon it. And maybe it does, with the virus. If you don't take the virus seriously, maybe your life does depend on it. But from a soul's perspective, you needed to have that experience. And then it's on to the next life and the next life and the next life. But we get all worked up on things that, the more that you can cultivate calm, the better. Let calm be your superpower. Any other questions?
It's very interesting what you said about the saying, because it's sometimes very interesting how we choose sayings. I have super strong Mercury.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, many years ago, I chose a saying, practice makes perfect. And I think this is so Mercurial.
Yeah, right.
I chose this saying before I knew about astrology. So I think that was like a natural Mercury chose that saying for me.
Yeah. Well, practice falls under Saturn because it's discipline.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Saturn is discipline and it's structure, and it's like keep going. Mercury is, I don't know if you've ever, when you were a kid, did you break open a thermometer and the mercury gets out and it like skittles everywhere? You can't pin it down. right? But Saturn is steady as she goes. It's discipline and structure. But so maybe you're structured around your mind. Mercury is your mind and your communication. So maybe you take learning seriously, right? Maybe you apply yourself to your communications, to studying astrology, things like that.
Yeah.
And astrology is a practice, right? You know, I started studying when I was a kid, and there's still so much to learn. Anyone else have something to share about winding up our time here?
I have a question, Debbie. What would you recommend book-wise for someone who's getting into this for the first time?
One of my favorite books is called Sun Sign, Moon Sign by Charles and Susie Harvey. And it's a wonderful blend of two of your big three aspects. So the sun, the moon, and the rising sign, the big three that have the most influence on your life. So when you read how your sun sign and moon sign go together or don't, it's very insightful. So that's one of my favorite books. I have shelves and shelves of astrological books, but mostly nowadays I'm online. Like whatever topic you want to learn about, it's online. And YouTube. Like there's several astrologers that I follow on YouTube, and I learned a lot from them. And I'm studying even Vedic astrology, which is Indian astrology. Joni Patri, who's from my hometown of Dallas. She was a Western astrologer before, and now she's Vedic, and they don't do the outer planets of Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, but she does. So it's kind of unusual for a Vedic astrologer to include Pluto. But, you know, definitely check out things online, check out YouTube. I'm sure there's an Astrology for Dummies book. I don't have it, but I love those, the idiots and dummies. I don't like the title of them, but they tend to be written by very well-versed people in whatever field. So those are good places to start. So take it in small bites. Like for the longest time, I didn't deal with aspects, but now like aspects for transit wise, aspects are everything, you know, but for the longest time, I was just focused on the signs and the houses and the planets. So don't feel like you need to learn everything all at once, because it's an art. It's both an art and a science. So just little bits that you pick up, and just hanging around people like people within this group is helpful, because that's how you learn, right? Just the more you're exposed to it, the more you learn. Good questions. Thank you.
Debbie, who would you, can you recommend somebody on YouTube? Because I feel like when I search on YouTube, it's too many people. I don't know who's reliable.
So one that I follow is Astrolada, L-A-D-A. Another is Astrology by Heather, or Astrology with Heather. Hers is really good. She does a weekly like planetary forecast for all 12 signs. She'll give like the energies of the week and then do all 12 signs. She also has on her website, I was just there today, she's got a bunch of free downloads that you can go on. She has different workshops and whatnot, but also a lot of free stuff. So she's really good. I like Denise Siegel. She's good. Let's see, who else do I follow? Like I mentioned, Joni Patri, and hers is galacticcenter.com or .org, I think is her website. She's Vedic astrology, so it's sidereal. So your signs are going to be usually one sign back. Like instead of a Leo sun, I'm a Cancer sun. Instead of Cancer rising, I'm Gemini rising. Instead of Gemini moon, I'm Taurus moon. So it's 23 degrees backwards from your tropical signs.
Do you follow Deborah Silverman?
Yes, that's another one, Deborah Silverman. She has a group that I'm on Facebook called 11th House Astrology with Deborah Silverman.
And she has a YouTube channel as well.
Yep, and she has YouTube, I like her. Any other suggestions? I'm drawing a blank on.
She also has a book called The Missing Sign, I think it is. That's what it's called. Her book, it's really good at just explaining how the elements of the signs, like the earth, fire, water, air,
Yeah.
and what element you're missing. And the missing element, that's what it's called.
Okay.
And it helped me really understand that aspect of the signs.
Another one is Steve Judd, Judd. He's in the UK. He's good. And Aliza, she goes by Moon Pluto. Aliza Moon Pluto. She's good. Who else? That's all I'm thinking of for now, but that'll get you started. Yeah, you're welcome. Anything else? We're going to wrap this up here. What'd you learn today? What insights? If any.
What
I
I've
like what
been,
you- oh, go ahead.
oh, go ahead, go ahead.
Okay. I was just going to say, I really liked how you described the planet and the sign and the house as the actor, the role, and the stage.
Yeah.
Through the retrograde. It makes more sense.
Mhm.
So,
Cool.
you know, not all Mercury retrogrades are the same, not all Mars retrogrades are the same. So it's, yeah, that was really helpful.
Good. Thank you. Okay. Someone else was going to say something?
Yes, I was gonna say it's just this is a good reminder that, you know, all of the intense emotions are valid.
Yes. There's a reason behind it. And we get to be like water and let it flow and not take it in.
Mhm.
Good point. All right, well, just a reminder, I am available for readings. I can do a full in-depth hour-long reading, that's 108, or for a special discount, if you just want a brief little synopsis, it's $1 a minute, 15-minute minimum. You can go to my website, it's astroyogawoman.com. Email is astroyogawoman@gmail.com, and I'd be happy to hook you up. So thanks everyone for joining me tonight. This has been so much fun. I love talking astrology, and you don't even have to know much about it, but just the fact that you showed up, I appreciate that. So I'll see you next month, the third Wednesday of each month, 7 p.m. Arizona time, which I think you guys have a time change coming up. So check your local time for whatever time that is. I'm so happy I don't have to go through that. I'm so happy to be in Arizona and not do time changes anymore. So,
Debbie,
all right,
is the only way to like sign up or get notified about these meetings through Meetup, or do you send out emails or anything else?
I don't send out emails. I send it on my Facebook. I have on Facebook a Learn Western Astrology group, and I'll post it there. And then I post it to my business page, which is Astro Yoga Woman. I post it to my personal page, which is Debbie Barnett Yoga. I put it on Twitter and Instagram. So
Thank you.
yeah. All right, y'all. Have a good evening.
Thank you very
Stay
much.
grounded.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stay
Bye.
clear.
Bye.
Peace.